Pi Upsilon Lambda Chapter, spring, April 17th, 1979. Well, it was big pressure. I mean, you know, Alex started out, and you know Alex's reputation and the things that Alex did. And then Ron, I think Ron was next. He only served for a year. And then Keith Wilson. So I followed Keith Wilson. So it was big shoes to fill. But when I took it on, I didn't look at it from that respect. I looked on it as, you know, we were a young chapter. I just wanted to make sure that we continued to progress. And at the end of the day, if I helped us to move from where we were to the next stage, then I felt like I was making a contribution. So I really didn't look at it. And plus I had the support. I mean, you know, Alice was still around, Keith was still around, Ron was still around for a time, and then he actually you know, moved out of the area. But I still had the support of the past presidents as well as you know, a great team. It was challenging when I first came on board, because I think when I first came on board, I thought, you know, everyone was elected to the position. They had their responsibilities, and I had big expectations. I expected everyone to play their role and do what they were supposed to do. And so early on, I turned into a little dictator kind of. but I had people like Richard Mathis and Joe Bryce on my executive. So you know, those brothers were not into letting somebody dictate to them what they were going to do. So it's a little tumultuous start now, but I realized early on that, you know, this is a volunteer organization. You know, you got to lead with a softer hand. And so after we had a come to Jesus meeting, we sat down and had a powwow, and they voiced their opinions and thoughts about, you know, how I was leading them. We were able to work through that. Significant turning point. You know, actually, as small as it might seem, a turning point for us was during that transition time where we transitioned from Gwynn Park to closer in schools, when we changed our seat from, I think originally it was Brandywine to where we are now in Capitol. Because underlining was it had some effect on the brotherhood. You know, it kind of divided us a little bit. Some folks that were actively involved early on decided that they didn't want to be involved any longer, and so we potentially had an opportunity or a situation where we could have lost membership and could have stopped growing and stopped building. But we didn't. You know, we overcame the storm. The nucleus of brothers that stayed became stronger, I think, and we helped to, because back then we really were putting a lot of things in process, standard operating procedures, and I mean a lot of building blocks that would help shape the chapter as it moves on. It was pretty interesting that meeting that I came here when we were talking about the cookout, and someone pulled out a book and they said, "Oh, last year they did this and they did that and so forth." And I didn't ask to see the book, but obviously it must be a book of what has been done and what's transpired, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Well, those were all the things that we were setting up back then. And you know, the foundation was young. You know, we hadn't yet received our 503c status, but we were still trying to build on it. So, you know, a lot of us were wearing dual roles. I mean, we were all, you know, members of the board of the foundation, and then carrying offices in the chapter, and, you know, wearing a bunch of different hats. And you know, for a lot of us, we weren't that young to the fraternity. I mean, a lot of us had pledged in the 70s and so forth. So I mean, we were still, 20, 25 years into the fraternity, still doing the work of Alpha. And so it was a potential time where the chapter could have just gone off in obscurity and just become just another chapter in Alpha, and we continue to progress during that, what I call transition period. In conversations with my predecessors, said that I was the one who placed on the floor the motion to move us to our current location, and that was actually the same chapter meeting that I was voted in as president. So I guess moving and changing our seat to where we are now was one of the accomplishments. But I think as I said, we were in a transition period. So moving us forward, keeping us on the path, building up the base of people the core people that are still part of the chapter. One of the biggest things, I think, was the continuation of the education piece that I'd started as a education director. I thought that was an important piece, and then bridging the gap from our beginning stages and help setting the path as we moved on as a young chapter. And I also reinstituted the current recognition program that we have. There was a year or two, I think 2 years, that the awards and recognition was set aside for some reason. But I reinstituted that, and we use that today, and it's even grown and expanded with the separate categories and the named categories that we currently have. But that was started back during my administration. One of the things that I tried to focus on at that time was I talked about it in my inaugural address about fun. FUND, funds, raising money for the chapter, as well as FUN, having fun with the chapter. And so, we were able to have that nice balance, because there was a lot to be done. One of the things that I wanted to try to do, and there's some remnants of it now even, but during my administration, I set up an investment fund. And the way it was supposed to work is that at the end of each of the chapter fraternal years, a percentage of whatever proceeds were left was supposed to be set aside for that fund. The idea was to build up enough that we could eventually have a big fundraising activity that was going to help to build us a house. And so it started there. And so we actually still have that fund. It was interesting because I played golf a couple of weeks with a guy that was part of foursome that was set up by the Prince George's County Chamber. And halfway through the round, I realized that I knew the guy, but I didn't really know him. And it ended up being the guy who set up our financial portfolio way back then. He's actually a friend. He went to Hampton. He's a friend of AB's. But it was just pretty funny, and he said, "Oh yeah, that fund is still out there. Still, I don't know how much money's in it, because somewhere along the way we moved away from that process, and we just never picked it up. But the fund is still there." My philosophy was that we needed to craft the type of environment that made folks want to be a part of us. And then we had to diligently go out and seek members to reclaim and new members to the fraternity. we were going through a number of different processes in terms of the intake piece. But I was really strong on reclamation. I really, wanted to reclaim brothers, and I was able to do that. I went to a local chapter, Iota Zeta chapter event, and I was recruiting brothers there. One of which is Tony Harris, one of the people that they're going to be sitting in this chair either today or next week. But I challenged my chapter brothers to get involved, and then Tony came, got involved, became chapter president, led the foundation, and Tony's record and reputation, and he'll tell you. I mean, I was the one that recruited him back. So I mean, that was my philosophy. I mean, there are great brothers out there that for some other reason they may have, left the area, came back. They may have just gotten involved in life because life happens. But to try to bring those brothers back, and sometimes all it takes is a conversation. Hey, have you thought about, getting involved, getting active again? My focus now is my family, and as much as I can devote to the fraternity. But most of my focus is March of Dimes. But I sit back sometimes, and it brings me so much joy. When I went to that Botillion, and I'm just sat back and just, the young brothers leading the Botillion and the work that they did, and it was just on point, on target, and to think we started that. I mean, it just, it again brings you to tears. I mean, it's just so amazing. I mean, to attend that breakfast and see the new brothers coming in with that same excitement and that you had 35 years, and you still can feel that. And that's Alpha, but it's also PUL. I mean, it's this, baby that you've seen blossom and grow up, and now it's 20 years old, and you're like, okay, you had a part of that. You helped shape that, and but the great part is you can see it continue to grow. You can see it continue to move, and that's a pretty nice legacy as a one of the earlier members of this chapter, one of the early presidents of the chapter when we were just starting new, to see it come to where it has come. When it's all said and done, and folks look back over my life and what I was able to bring to the fraternity, I feel pretty proud about that.